It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. You're live with Expresso. Let's inspire you right now to think about some of the basics differently. When you think of education and the obstacles that our youth face in that space, sanitation probably isn't a factor that you have considered. We in fact, I think, take it for granted. But sadly, unsafe sanitation and poor hygiene has become a paramount problem in our schools and is adversely affecting our learners during a critical phase of their development. But the incredible team at Domestos are fighting to protect the dignity of our future generations and calling on you and me to work towards building long-term sanitation solutions, not a quick fix. And here to share all about it is Nobuhle Ngubane, the Senior Brand Manager for Domestos South Africa, who was also bopping his shoulder at that sound check we were being treated to as well, which says to me that you are inspired to be here, because this is something that is inspiring, but it's also heartbreaking that so many learners have had to deal with the situation that they currently have to. And I'm so glad that you have turned your collective might, because you guys know this space better than anyone else. Maybe set the scene for us, because it feels like over the last 18 months, because of COVID, this additional spotlight has been cast over the situations that our learners find themselves in. And how can you expect a learner to go to school, develop, grow in that kind of reality? So how bad is it at the schools that you're wanting to change?
Thank you, Graham, and good morning to the viewers at home. You know, the World Bank reported last year that well-managed water, sanitation, and hygiene services are crucially important in protecting those who are, vulnerable to infectious diseases such as disease outbreaks such as the COVID-19 pandemic. Yet, unfortunately, over 2 billion people worldwide still do not have access to a decent, clean, and safe toilet. And in South Africa, over 3,800 schools still had pit latrines in 2018. Now, you talk about poor sanitation. I mean, the biggest impact of poor sanitation is usually, the transmission of diseases. But we also know that poor sanitation also infringes on the well-being of learners and denies them their right to dignity and privacy. Which also has an overall impact on their well-being.
Completely. And thankfully, mental health has been cast into that spotlight as well now. More than ever, we understand that we have to look after ourselves on every level. You obviously, I joke about Domestos knowing this space, the hygiene space, that's your playground. Excuse the pun again, but you obviously have an opportunity with this knowledge, the intellectual might that you have in that space to do something about it. What are you wanting to achieve?
Look, Domestos, and a lot of viewers may not know this, because a lot of viewers will know that Domestos is a brand that actually offers products that protect our homes from germs. But also, Domestos is a brand that is anchored and driven by its purpose to win the war against unsafe sanitation and poor hygiene in order to protect those who are vulnerable from illness-causing germs, for us in South Africa, especially on young learners in school.
For me, it's that early childhood development. I suppose having young kids, that's why it's such a trigger point for me. Not your first rodeo. You guys have been working in this space for a while now. Talk to me about your track record in the space and what's led you to this point.
Absolutely. I mean, Domestos has 3 pillars to our purpose, which spans over a decade, as you've mentioned, and has impacted over 5 million learners in South Africa and over 28 million people globally. So how we started in 2010 is we started by refurbishing school toilets here in South Africa around 2010, but then we found gaps in the system where some of the infrastructure that was built was actually not well maintained or used properly, and that was just an issue of lack of awareness and education. So what we did after that is we partnered with the Department of Basic Education and introduced 2 additional programs to our purpose, which is the National Schools Hygiene Program, which is a program that educates over 1 million learners on the importance of good hygiene habits, and also introduced another program called the Cleaner Toilets, Brighter Future program, which actually focuses on upskilling the caretakers that look after toilets in terms of giving them basic skills of keeping toilets clean and safe for learners to use in school.
Absolutely love it. You know, I think of when COVID first rolled around, I just imagined Domestos going like, hold my drink. I'm ready for hygiene. And that's the bottom line. I know you guys have a huge amount of understanding of the space, but I'm so glad you're putting your money where your mouth is as well and making it part of your purpose, the pillars that the company culture is built on. So thank you so much for that. We are hopefully going to be helping so many children along this journey, and we have a way of being able to help ourselves. So here's the deal. Every time that you choose Domestos, you are helping to build a safer school for the kids of South Africa. It's as simple as that. R1 from every bottle of Domestos sold will go towards safer toilets for over 1 million learners. That's a lot of children helped. Epic endeavor, and you can be a part of that. So please stay with us. We're going to continue the conversation. We're going to invite clinical psychologist Dr. Tsepiso Matenje to unpack the long-term effects of poor sanitation. So as we've said, yes, there is the hygiene element of it, but there's dignity as well. And we want our children to be mentally safe and sound as well.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. You're on Live with Expresso. Thank you so much for keeping it locked. Here's a question. Did you know that today, the 11th of October, is International Day of the Girl Child, as declared by the United Nations? This is a day set to focus on the very specific challenges that girls face, and we go on to promote girls' empowerment and the fulfillment of their human rights at the most basic level, which sadly we are not getting right in so many ways. So I am so glad that we have the opportunity to focus on that today. And today we are joined by, we are continuing, in fact, our discussion on the sanitation crisis, I'm going to call it, in our schools, some of our schools, and how this is affecting our female learners in particular. And we are joined once again by the wonderful Nobutle Ngobane from Domestos, and then psychologist and life coach, Dr. Tsepiso Matenje. Doc, thank you for joining the conversation. We've been all talking about how much we love hygiene. We take it for granted, and maybe it's become so much more of a focus over the last 18 months. But it's beyond me that in this woke society that we exist in, that children, young children especially, are still having to deal with the reality of the kinds of situations that they are when it comes to sanitations, the kinds of toilets that we are seeing, and obviously highlighted by Michael Kompape's story. That, I think, was a massive wake-up call and a mirror held up to our face. But from your perspective, your professional opinion, what kind of effect does having those kind of living conditions have on children especially?
Look, there are certain conditions that are conducive to learning and the healthy development of a child. When you introduce things that create anxiety, that create fear, the fact that the child has to go to the bathroom in a place that is unsafe, that is public, their dignity, their exposure to people who might be bullying them, who might be sexually assaulting them, or even exposing them to drugs, that is a concern. But one of the other things that we know about such environments, because if the toilets are not a safe space, is that just the simple bodily movement of relieving yourself gets interfered with. We've got children who are going to now have anxiety about the fact that they need to go and relieve themselves in a school where everybody else is going to see them, and they might want to constrain the bowel movements.
They will, yeah.
And you know, we psychologically we see children struggling with encopresis and enuresis, where they literally lose control over their body functions, and then they wet themselves when they shouldn't, or even soil themselves when they shouldn't. Or you have the extreme where the child holds so tightly that they don't relieve themselves when they need to, and that just interferes with their ability to be able to deal with what they need to deal with in terms of nature and their bodily functions, and then focus on school and go on with life. So those types of things are unnecessary, and they just create anxiety with the young child. School
becomes a distant second,
Yeah.
way distant second. I've got a young girl child now, so maybe this has become a slightly more relevant conversation for me, but there are particular pressures that a young girl faces regardless in a school environment. Now you are taking that and exponentially increasing it. How does this, seeing as we are focusing on the girl child on this day, especially, how does this situation impact on young women especially?
Look, as a young girl, as a young woman, when you go to the toilet, you need to sit down. if the place is dirty, if the place is, there's no door, if you have to do it in a public space. So there's a loss of privacy. Just think also about the sense of dignity that the child has. We want kids to have a positive body image. We want girls to be able to have a very positive body image and a positive self-esteem. How do you do that when anybody in public can see what you're doing, have comments about how you are smelling, what it is that you have done wherever you are? So those types of things are actually harmful in terms of the self-esteem and the body image that we're trying to cultivate in the child. And then we are also concerned about the fact that for children out there, particularly young girls, where the toilets are not safe, they're in public, the knowing about personal boundaries, because your privacy is invaded, right? Because you are helping yourself, relieving yourself in a public space. You also realize that how then do we teach you about having personal boundaries around your body and knowing when it is okay or not okay for somebody to have access to touch you, to see, to even engage with you about certain conversations. So we worry about how it exposes these children to sexual abuse and stuff like that, yeah.
And especially at that key phase of development when a young girl is not only setting her idea of what the world is, but her own self-identity. And she's going to carry that with her for the rest of her life.
We've also noted that we've got a lot of kids who they are absent from school because of having their periods. Now, can you imagine in terms of the impact it has on your quality of learning, that inconsistent attendance of school, and we are already manifesting in poor results, for academic outcomes for girls.
Up to a year of school, by the end of their schooling career, because of that factor exactly, a young girl can lose up to a year of her schooling. Domestos has stepped in a very big way, and I'm so glad that this has gone beyond just a great marketing promotion to something that is going to affect, hopefully at the end of this, over 1 million learners. Why should people get on board? We know you've made it easy for us. Why get behind this?
You know, what viewers may not know is that over the past decade, through just the simple purchase of Domestos products, they've allowed us to actually invest over 29 million rand in projects that actually help bring cleaner and safer toilets for learners in schools. So, you know, it takes a village, and there's more work that needs to be done, as the doctor has explained. And all we are just asking consumers to do is actually just continue to purchase the brand, because it actually does make an impact, and it will help us end the sanitation crisis along with our partners. So it's very, very important for all of us to partner together and make sure that this sad reality, you know, is one that we see to an end.
I think when it gets a little overwhelming, as it is in the face of the last 18 months of every factor of life, whether it's food security, sanitation, period poverty, we just seem to have had a wake-up call, a slap across the face. There is an opportunity for us to help, even if it's just one girl child, make a difference in her life. What are your final thoughts here in this space?
I really would love people to know that there are brands out there that have purpose. When you buy things, be intentional. You might not be involved in a local charity, you might not even be volunteering in the local community, but when you buy brands with purpose, like Domestos, you're actually making an impact. It's important that from a place of privilege, you recognize it and you realize you can make a difference in small ways, and buying such brands actually helps you to do that.
When you are cleaning your toilet today, when you are in a home in that safe, comfortable, luxurious place that is we rely on so much in our own home, think about those children, especially the young girls that are dealing with a different reality. Thank you so much. This has been a real eye-opener, and hopefully you at home have started thinking about the choices that you can make as a consumer. Yes, you can lead the charge, and I encourage all of you to join Domestos in the fight to win the war against unsafe sanitation and hygiene. 1 rand from every bottle of Domestos that you buy will go towards safer toilets for 1 million learners. This is a brilliant and easy way for you to support young people.
So, really, really inspired. And I love brands like Domestos are not afraid to get their hands dirty to alleviate the plights of South Africans. Absolutely incredible.